It's All Blacks time. Monday afternoon, Scott Robertson names his first squad, a 32-man squad out of Christchurch. It's a smaller squad, I think, than maybe been named in the past for some of the home series. 32 men. Let's look into it. Bryn, where do you think are the key places that we need to look at for this squad? What are the places which are, there's conjecture over?
Yeah, look, it's been tough. I think the 32 is so hard because obviously, you're probably going to be a little bit less underdone in certain positions because it's, a lot of utility is probably going to be used. But I think, probably a couple of positions that I'm thinking is probably the third hooker and who's going to be selected if Samasoni isn't available with Amu and Cody Taylor. I think Ricky Riccatelli is a person that's, put his hand up for a lot of years, and I think this year especially warrants to be able to be in conversation with that. George Bell was talked about last year, but I think with maybe the introduction of Super Rugby, is he ready? I'm not too sure, but Riccatelli, I think, has had a great season this year. The locks is something that I've really struggled to see where they're going to go with the injury of Peli Tuipulotu. I think if he was available, you'd have a Scott Barrett, Tupou Vai, Pacha Tuipulotu, and then obviously a guy that's been playing really well at Super Rugby. But because there isn't that experience, we're probably going to see guys that have played next to no internationals, but have played, I guess, All Black 15 in New Zealand Māori, given opportunity. So the locking stakes is one that I'm looking at. Also, for myself, is the halfbacks. I think Cortez Aratimo will come in for that third position with the way that he's played. I think they're only going to select 2 10s. I think it's going to be Damien McKenzie and Bowden Barrett, with, I think, how the squad makeup's going to be. And then lastly, will probably be the outsides and the mix of how many there are going to be, because I think there's obviously Talia, Reese, Caleb Clark's probably been in there, obviously, but I think Nana Saturu has had an outstanding year, and the ability of him to be able to cover wing and play fullback in the last couple of weeks with Sean Stevenson not being available, I think he's a guy that will be massive. And just hearing Leo McDonald's interview last night, thinking that they are going to, well, obviously he might be pulling our pants down a little bit here, but he did say that they were going to pick two out-and-out 15s. So the likes of a Ruben Love and a Sean Stevenson, they're probably 2 guys that I think are going to be that second 15. If Bowden Barrett, I believe, is going to be 15. And again, I don't know if they're going to take a third cover 10. Stephen Perifeta's in that conversation. David Harvilli possibly, because, he plays 10, 12, 15. And does he come into consideration along with the Billy Proctor, who's had a great season at 13? So a lot of areas that I think are really tough. I think the utility ability, I think, is going to be massive for that 31, 32, those last couple of positions at the moment.
I sort of felt, my gut was thinking they would take Stevie, Bowden, and Damien, and I sort of felt that Bodie would be that probably genuine first choice 15 man. He played some awesome footy and really owned it in the end towards the end of last year. Yes, he can play 10, but you have to feel it's similar to when Richie was around. Damien needs to be on the field as well. So maybe it's one could play 10, one could play 15 theoretically, but I think Bodie is world class at 15 and 10, so it makes sense to have him there. I think Stevie deserves a genuine crack and more time in and around the environment to sort of hone his craft. And as we've seen with first fives, lot leaving and one's injured, sabbaticals, that depth and that experience. All you need is 1 or 2 injuries, and that depth and experience, can be tested again. I stress he has performed extremely well in the 10 jersey at All Blacks 15, and he's done so at Super Rugby and NPC for a number of years. So I feel Stephen Pickford has to be there. And then I think the makeup of the back 3 is you're probably looking and focusing on wingers that potentially maybe up to cover 15, but more your out-and-out wingers like Mark Talia, Nana Saturu, Caleb Clark, whoever it may be, to make up that 32 for those ones. I think the other area Bryn touched on is lock. I think potentially maybe they just name 3 and have the ability to think, Sammy Finney may be able to cover that due to his height and his efficiency at lock time, because I don't know how they're going to squeeze that loose from the trio down. I know I'm not giving a lot of answers here, but I think that's the most exciting thing. That's the squad isn't predictable. But does Sam Cane, where's he? Is he available? And you've got to think he's made the bulk of the tackles for that loose forward trio for the last few years. He has played an important, I suppose, thankless task. And so the makeup of the loose forward trio and the roles that they play, it may differ if he's not there. So yeah, I've probably got more questions than answers, but it's also it has created a lot of excitement, I believe, in the naming, which hasn't been there for a while. And I think the unknown of these coaches, I sort of don't know which way they're going to land. I think we'll see less locks, more losses.
Yeah, and I think we can't probably underestimate that there are 32 players that are going to be named, but there are going to be injury covers, and they will have probably 2 or 3 that will be travelling along with the squad because there are injuries. So they might be able to then pick from there. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I agree with around the locks and being able to it's the looses that's probably the hardest thing for me. What that split's going to be. How do you choose out of Severe, Papali'i, Jacobson, Satutu, Blackadder, Wallace Atiti, and Brendan Uose, Larkai, Duplessis, Creefy? Man, it's just so hard. You don't know.
Yeah, for me, you have to start at Savia. Is he a 7 or is he a 8? And once you've made that decision, you can build from there.
Well, I think you're obviously a forward, but for me, Savia would be, he's an 8.
Who are you picking at 7 and who are you picking at 6?
Man, this is the hardest position to do. If I had to put you starting, I would go Severe, Papali'i, and I'd go Blackadder.
Yeah.
Blackadder at 6.
Blackadder at 6. As far as line-out options are concerned, that becomes a little bit more difficult. It's not an out-and-out tall guy in the loose forwards who's a proper line-out option.
Yeah, probably actually just talked me out of that right now, isn't it? Because I think you're right. The line-out option is important. If it's not a Blackadder, then Jacobson and I feel like Jacobson and Blackadder are going up against each other. I think they are really good in and around 6, 7, 8, can cover multiple positions, have a pretty similar game in and around the physicality, breakdown, and being able to have a big engine. They both have those traits. Now, I don't know if they're going to select both of them, because if you've got similar traits, then you're probably better off maybe having a female, a Semisoni female, who has that kind of line-out option, and Hoskins Satutu obviously is a number 8, Cullen Grace or Yose that can jump in a line-out. But on that note, I'd just have to go, maybe it'd be a Savia, Papali'i, and then a female for that line-out experience that you are talking about, if they don't think that they can cover that with Savia, Papali'i, and Blackadder at 6. That's been my thinking, to try and at least get some clarity around how this loose forward's going to be picked.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I'd see it is, and I'm putting my theoretical coach hat here. The reason why Ardie has become the best player in the world is because we've allowed him to play to his strengths, which is his ball carrier's power game. If you put him at 7, he's going to have to make a hell of a lot more tackles, and I don't think that's necessarily smart. To become the best player in the world at number 8, he's a number 8 that can move to 7 later in the game. But the more times we can have his tank fresh so that he can have those big moments, the better. That's why I sort of mentioned Sam Cane. If he's fit and healthy, is there a transition period? With him ever knowing he's moving on next year, or is it just rip the Band-Aid off and Papali'i, Blackadder, Jacobson fills that role at 7, even potentially a Peter Lakai. So I think first things first, to answer your question, named as an 8.
I just feel like having Savia at 7 opens up your options for a better balanced loose forward trio. You've got to have a big ball carrier at number 8 who is kind of more of an international ball carrier size, and then you can have an out-and-out, line-out, wide ball carrier at 6. I feel like you hold yourself back by having him at 8 in a lot of ways. I feel as a balanced loose forward trio, it feels better with him at 7 to me.
Yeah, look, I think it is. It's a valid point. If you want to go through that theory, then you obviously have Severe there. Then you can have a 6 and 8 that can have their Hoskins Satutu, who has a great line-out ability, as an example, who I think is the second best 8 at the moment throughout this year. So, yeah, to answer your question, I don't know. Who do you think?
Who would I pick?
Yep.
Who would I pick? I would pick Savia at 7.
Yep.
I'd pick Satutu to start with at 8 as an out-and-out 8, and I'd pick Samapeni Finau at 6 as a hard-running, hard-tackling, outside channel, line-out winning option. And then I'd look to the bench, and you look at Blackadder can play all 3 positions, and maybe that allows you to have a person like Satiti or Yose who can come in as an impact ball-carrying player later on in the game.
So you're thinking maybe then a 6-2 split on a bench?
A 6-2 split on a bench.
Possibly.
Give yourself maximum impact, and then rely on the fact that in your backline you've got lots of people who can play multiple positions. You've got multiple first 5 fullbacks, you've got a second 5 who can play, you've got a centre who can play on the wing. They've got that pretty well covered. And you can say, okay, we'll have a backup halfback and then an outside back who
can cover multiple positions.
Yeah, you've got your Havili or someone along those lines. I feel like if you pick a Caleb Clark and a Talea, you can play them for 80 minutes, you can have maximum impact and then essentially just cover as you need to. That would be my take, but like you say, it's impossible.
It's pretty good clarity, man. Like, honestly, that was actually pretty good. Like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, because when I looked at it and I sat down this morning and I was like, okay, how many props do you have? How many hookers do you have? How many locks do you have? How many loosies do you have? It became really difficult with all of the trade-offs. But when push comes to shove, the loose forwards is where your genuine impact is outside of those guys who are going to play plenty, especially if you've got a Scott Barrett who can play 80, you know, and has a massive engine on him. You've got that ability. Vai, he's an 80-minute player too. So maybe it's you move to that loose forward, and like you say, if you've got a lock that goes down, you've got a female as well who can maybe slot in there if you end up in some sort of trouble during the game, and you can move that around. So that's where I'd come from.
And also, I don't think this will happen because we don't have the depth at this stage, but, you know, Scott Barrett and a Tupou Vai could possibly play 6 as well. But I don't think we probably need them to be locks with obviously the injuries to Paddy. But I think if Paddy was back, you know, there could be that question, does Scott cover a 6? A 6 role, do you know what I mean?
And he has in the past,
and he has
done it fairly well. My only problem with only flicking 3 locks is that we're at a position where you've got very little experience. Barrett has got a lot of international experience. Vai has mixed experience in big games. He only comes off the bench every now and then in big games because we've had that big 3 locks. He's been a real support player. So then if you lose both of those guys to injury and you don't spend time during this next month giving Wakaliawere and Darry some time, you're going to get to the Rugby Championship and you're going to be up shit creek.
Who's to say a few positions won't change this week? Like, my gut says you'd have to think Isaiah Walker-Lereru would get that 3rd locking spot. But who's to say Sam Darry doesn't have a good game? Jesus, and now I think it's the same at number 8. Like, you know, Hoskins he seems very focused. Even when he's player of the match interviewed after the game last week, he was like, the job's not done. He just seems very zoned in. He knows he needs another big performance because he's the big difference between the Blues winning and losing this season. And he knows that the responsibility rests on him for that team, but also if he gets that right, you know, that selection, not that speed will be there. And you know, Wallace Satiti, I think, you know, before I thought he may get some premiership time or something, but he puts another shift in like that. You know, he's definitely knocking on the door saying that, he wants to take on it.
Captaincy, there appear to be 2 contenders. Scott Barrett is one, considering his time at the Crusaders has been very successful. Ardie Savea is another, considering he is the World Player of the Year and has been a leader within the Hurricanes environment and a vice captain at the All Blacks along the way. Which way do they go?
Oh, it's really tough, I think. You know, collectively those coaches will know what they'll want to see as a captain, but I think first and foremost, as a captain, you've got to be selected first in that team. You're known and you're always going to be on the field, you know. So, you know, probably Scott and Ardie live to that kind of mantra of, like, you know, as a New Zealand player, they're going to be on the field. I think both of them are world class. Obviously, Aotearoa has just become the best player in the world and he's been doing it for a very long time. Scott, I think, is getting to that stage now where he's the premier lock with Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock gone, and he has shown some really good growth in the international level and at Super Rugby level. And I just think it's going to come down as well to, I think, you know, winning is really, really important and being able to be adaptable. And I think having, you know, you look at Richie McCaw, Kieran Reid and obviously Sam Cane was selected, the guys that have really good adaptability and understanding situationally what's required to win games and being comfortable, being uncomfortable in tight situations is a big part of being captain. So
who would you pick?
I actually don't know, because I don't know. I know I haven't had the chance to be able to be captain from Ardie, but I know from all accounts from the guys that have been in that environment, he has a big part in that environment, and he's the World Player of the Year. He's captained the All Blacks before, so he could obviously do it, and I've obviously been captain under Scott Barrett. Great man, has some great leadership qualities and is getting better at the international level. So I actually can't answer it, Ross.
Okay.
I can't actually answer it.
Let me change the question then.
I can't answer it.
Who do you think they will pick?
Well, you can't go past Scott, can't you?
Yeah.
Look, Razor's, you know, obviously he's been his captain at the Crusaders. He knows him as a person. but you can't take away from what Artie's done as well. Artie has a big positiveness in and around that All Black environment, what he's done with that leadership group and that team. So with whatever way they do go, like, they're both two great candidates. I just think, just knowing Razor, and probably, you know, the only reason why I'd say that is because he's picked him as captain at the Crusaders.
Yeah.
But two great leaders. Jip, take the heat off me, mate. I can't pick it, mate. I actually can't pick it. So who do you reckon?
Hey, Bruno, can I just ask a question? I was just having a think while you were talking there. Did Razor ever pick co-captains for the Crusaders? Or did he always go an out-and-out captain?
No, he'd go always an out-and-out captain. I think the only time he did a co-captain was when I think Sam was in Japan, and it might have been Davey and Cody that might have been co-captains, but yeah, I can't imagine him going co-captains. But if he did, like, you can do that.
Did he pick an off-the-field captain as well as an on-the-field captain? I remember reading about that. Was there a person who did more of the leadership off the field in order to take the pressure off the captain on the field?
Oh, look, I just think Sam did that just naturally. Right. I think knowing what his ability was to be able to get the best out of the group, and had a real good understanding and grasp of what was required. It took the pressure off Scott, and probably Scott, you know, when he first was captain, Sam had all that experience. Probably the reason why it was given to him is because Sam went off to Japan, and so it's like, right, here's a good chance to be able to build Scott as a captain, and where he's got a lot better in that space within the last 3 years being with that group. But yeah, to answer your question in and around that, it was more so Scott. It's been able to take the pressure off, you know, your leaders in other areas. And it wasn't just like Sam Whitelock, but other players get times. Cody Taylor, David Harvilli were able to talk to Razor and take the pressure off Scott or whoever was the captain at the time to be able to try and get the best out of them. And then, I guess, taking responsibility away from the captain off the field. Okay,
Jip, you're in the firing line, mate. Who would you pick, and who do you think they'll pick?
I know one thing that is extremely important with a captain is that captain-coach relationship. So I suppose competition for spots would suggest, you know, Scott might have the inside running because he's obviously got that relationship, but then understanding Jason Holland has that relationship with Artie as well. And I don't think you can factor out Cody either, but you've got to think with explosive power that potentially come off the bench. You know, you probably don't want to be moving your captain. So then, you know, logic would tell me it's either Scott or Artie or both.
Some good fence sitting here, guys.
Hold on. It's not fence sitting, because I genuinely do think, like, Razor's always been different. He sees things differently. And the idea of co-captaincy for the All Blacks doesn't seem right, because history says it should be one person. There's one thing I've learned, which I suppose from afar, Bryn will know it better than me. He leaves no stone unturned. If he thinks, you know, there's the potential that gets the best out of the group, I see no reason why that can't happen.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Just bring on. When's the date? The 24th?
Yeah, the 24th, Monday 24th.
Monday 24th.
And make sure that you tune into us. We'll be doing our show that night afterwards. So we'll have a reaction, and hopefully we'll have an All Black coach on the show next week for a bit of reaction to it. We'll also next week be sitting down like we did last year, doing a bunch of interviews with All Blacks players the day after and slowly sprinkling them out in our show over the international season. So you get to know these players and what makes them up a little bit more.